New Year's Eve of 2019, I made this digital illustration, which I reinterpreted every year following that. It's the Lily factor! Ding! The reward of reimagining these illustrations every year is that I get to see how my art looks at the end of every year. So I get to see how much I've improved and how much I need to work on. So for 2021's New Year drawing, I didn't end up finishing it until... Ow! Just stubbed my toe. Why do I get stuff like this on tape? I was just trying to say that I didn't finish it until 2022. They're in making that this redraw is only a 9-month difference of improvement and just keeping it real, you know? You can't always get it every time. But for this year, I began brainstorming the character because every year I try to make her look a little different. And this year was going to be the same. Keep some things consistent, change some other things. The hair remains the same kind of swoopy looking hair. And I wanted to keep the short skirt and bring back the jacket from the first year New Year drawing. Wow. I'm going to be saying the word year a lot in this video. I also wanted to keep some transparency in the outfit. Last year's drawing, she had this kind of transparent wrap, I would say. And I really liked that, but I didn't want to give her a wrap this time. So I decided to give her like a transparent scarf and some transparent ruffles on the end of her short skirt. And I liked that. I haven't really gotten to the point where I officially have decided her design. These were kind of the rough stages of trying to figure her out, you know, and it gets, you know, weird. Sometimes I draw hands that don't really look like hands. Just anything to try and get myself excited about the design, which I was really struggling to do. So I even tried, you know, drawing her in color just to get myself excited about what kind of color and texture I could emulate, and it wasn't really going anywhere. So I moved on to brainstorming the background, setting out some thumbnails, because that I actually was excited about, which I can say is an improvement from last year, because I don't know, just I've enjoyed drawing backgrounds more this year, or rather 2022, because I guess it's 2023 now. How time flies. But I always draw the character in this beach walk kind of scene with a wall and water and a lamppost, and I wanted to stick to that, but create more view of the scene she's in, put it at a different angle. And I thought, what if she's in a beach that's also an amusement park that has a Ferris wheel in the background and everything? And I really like the idea, but as I go further along with this, I realized that the character gets very lost in the background and that the background was more dominant. So even though I set the thumbnails and really liked what I had here, I don't end up going with that for the final illustration. But at the time, thinking I was done with setting up the background, I had to go back to the character design. And at this point, I just start to get really uninspired, I guess. And ended up drawing some weird stuff. But at this point in brainstorming, I started to realize that I wasn't drawing the character how I would draw a character now, which is why I wasn't really excited or into the drawing as previous years, because I just do it a little differently than years back. So this drawing here, I start to just kind of add more waves to the hair. It's really not that much of a difference, but it got me excited. So then I finally had a sketch where I was getting somewhere with it, and I got really excited, which is what I needed to do. I knew I wasn't gonna have fun with this if I wasn't excited about the design. So around here, I finally figured out the design. I wanted there to be some good motion in her outfit, even in the jacket. And then I got started on the final illustration, except this is not the final illustration. I just thought it was, but this is where I realized the background says, "Look at me," and the character says, "Where am I?" She got so lost. So I don't go with that. It's very interesting, the conclusion of 2020 for me. The whole creative art that had been going on for me that year was not so good. I was not enjoying drawing at all. I disliked everything I put onto the page, and I just felt like the passion was gone, so to speak, even though it wasn't, because every day, I wake up and I'm like, what am I gonna draw today? What am I gonna create? But that year, even though I had those thoughts, when I actually sat down to put something out in tangible form, out of my brain, it just made me want to scream, just felt nothing, conveyed nothing, That was just a year for me. It was a rut of a year. And it's so very difficult, but towards the end here, when I create this illustration, I was like, okay, things are gonna change. That's what I'm clinging onto. And so despite being unmotivated and uninspired throughout the year, I did, however, achieve quite a few illustrations and art projects that I think were very interesting. For starters, I designed a logo for Eagle Creek Storage Company, which was really fun to do. And then I did the Ezekiel's Vision of God drawing, which I recorded the process of that one. And then I made this huge marker illustration for a competition, and I just love how warm the colors are. It's not color vomity, it just conveys what I wanted to convey. So good projects like that where I just made these big illustrations. And then I did the carnival cutout painting and recorded that process too. So I did quite a few video projects that were fun as well. I made a list of goals over the year, because in the middle of the year I just felt like I was accomplishing nothing. So I thought, okay, if I write down just these mini goals, really broad, that I could just check off, but that I had to do, just in the whole year, give myself a lot of time, I thought maybe then I'll feel like I accomplished something. So towards the end of the year, I sat down and I looked back at this list I had, and I realized I had checked off 90% of the goals. Things I wanted to work on, like drawing backgrounds and, other things that I won't really get into, but it was really interesting. And the other thing was I had on this list, learn 3D animation. And, well, I did manage to make my first 3D animation that year. I mean, it's just a simple cell fracture animation, and just from a tutorial, and honestly, I'm not that much of a tech whiz, because I couldn't figure out how to save it, so I had to just record it off my computer screen. But that was really, kind of keeps that hope, someday. And I did take an animation course specifically for 3D animation in Blender at a professional establishment, and it was terrible. I knew more than the teacher did, and what I know comes from Blender for Dummies. Come on. So that was kind of a flop. So it's like I had some highlights, and then I had a lot of flops. I took this coding course that was terrible, and I took this short story writing workshop that was terrible. It was just a whole bunch of things that were meh. So I really had to kind of rely on everything I already had in front of me and just kind of work on my own to figure these things out. I continued at the beginning of the year, the second level of an animation course I was taking, and then I did the third level towards the end of the year, and I did some more focus on specific actions in animation as well as storytelling, and I created 2 story reels or animatics that I'm not going to share, but that was really interesting to do. Not crazy about storyboarding, but it was fun to put it all together and make a little scene out of it. But reverting back to the 3D animation course, it was frustrating because the teacher really was kind of just winging it most of the time, and I would try and ask the teacher questions just to learn something, and the teacher would always respond, oh, well, we'll do that tomorrow, or we're gonna discuss that tomorrow. Not. There was one point, there was a teaching assistant, and one day I had asked, hey, I made this self-fracture animation, and I, despite looking, I couldn't figure out, how to save the animation because of what computer I'm using. And the TA next to my teacher was like, well, why don't you just try, looking it up on YouTube to figure it out? I'm just sitting there staring blankly at them, thinking in my head, don't you think I've already tried that? Why else would I be here? So that course left me really frustrated, and I was just kind of feeling distraught because I didn't really do any recreational animation. It was all for courses with the exception of that self-fracture animation. And I was thinking, it's just hard, and I'm tired, and I just don't want to try these things, drawing, animation, blah, blah, blah. But one day, I just happened upon a tutorial that I thought, wow, everything they're saying about 3D animation, how to make this thing in 3D animation, I know what they're talking about. And so I followed that, and then one thing led to another, and then I started making a 3D model, and we'll see how that goes. But it got me excited to try again. It just pushing through despite frustrations over the year that always left me in a rut. I would say overall 2022 though was a hard year for me. I've had a long streak of difficult times, and not to be negative about it, because with problems come solutions, but what made this year tougher is that I've found that when I have had difficult times, there's usually something good that happens to kind of help you keep going. But this year, while I've had harder years than this, it was difficult because everything I love to do had pulled away from me, from animation to my stories, interest in drawing, desire to make art videos, and things like that, where it was just, I was trying to get back to stuff I had kind of stepped away from, but it was difficult to try and do that. And it was just, I felt like if I were to sum up the year in one word, I would say determination, because things, I had stuff that didn't go quite well. I had a lot of people in my life kind of go their own separate way, so to speak, and it was just kind of leaving me in this rut of like, I don't feel like I'm doing anything, nothing's happening, why am I still here doing nothing? And so I just felt like the whole time, every time I actually had these successes that I've talked about, it was just out of pure determination, just kind of like going into the battlefield, running, because I gotta do something, I can't just stand there. So during these times, I searched for answers from God as to why I'd been in this rut. And while I'm still not entirely sure why yet, in a devotional, I saw this quote that I had saved over the year. And when I was looking through photos to be sure I didn't miss anything, like talking about what I've done over the year, I found a screenshot that I took from this devotional on the YouVersion Bible app, which was entitled, "If You're Terrified, You're on the Right Track." And I believe that this, what they said, kind of perfectly states how to remain determined when you're in a rut. So it says, God loves me more than I can even imagine. I've got what it takes to crush my goals. I will extend grace to myself when I'm tired. I will work super hard when I'm inspired. Creativity flows from me, and witty inventions are my birthright. I'm worth more than rubies, and my work will yield tangible results. I am worth the investment I've made in myself. I choose to consider my accomplishments today. Now let's do this. And I found that to kind of validate how I felt. Despite frustrations, limitations, and difficulties in things we create, there's reasons for them, and to have resilience and be okay with some days when you're tired and you just can't get anything done, and be proud of when you can get things done and not feel like your work matters with how much you do, but why you do it and where your motivations are. Even in the fire, we overcome. And even for creating this 4th New Year drawing, I had a lot of difficulty, and I hated the drawing the majority of the time till the day after finishing it. But I was determined to get it done, and I'm so glad that I did. Let another year of creating begin. Thank you for watching, and may God bless you in your life and your art. Bye!